Hi, Critical Analysis. This video is for Tuesday, March 24th. This is week 10. We have now been doing online learning for a full week. We're entering our second week of completely remote or online coursework. So just a couple things. Last week, you had your Chapter 6 text sheet due. I'm in the course under content right now. Chapter 6, you all had your Chapter 6 text sheet submitted through the Dropbox or email or text, whatever worked for you. Now, I'll touch base with a few of you because you have not submitted it yet. I will still accept it. I know a lot of you are still getting used to this format, still trying to figure out your new schedule. A lot of things are going on right now, so I'll still take it. Don't feel like you've missed it completely. Still, please submit that to me so you can still carry on and get those grades. Due tonight is your chapter 1 through 5 vocabulary test. I'm going to scroll down. It is right between chapters 5 and 6. You can get it right there. Click on it. Open it up. Here's the test. Many of you who've turned it in have just actually been typing right in the document itself. I've had a couple of you, you have obviously have access to a printer, so you've printed it off in handwritten and then either scanned or you took pictures and sent it back in. The key is just make sure you do it. Just make sure you complete it. Whatever format is easiest for you is fine. And I did go into more detail about the directions and everything in a previous video. So that is due by tonight, 10 o'clock tonight, Tuesday, March 24th is when chapter 1 through 5 test is due. Also, you may be wondering about chapter 6 vocabulary because we did talk about it already. So again, chapter 6, we already went through the study guide. I have my completed study guide in there. We have not opened the quiz yet. You have not taken it yet. You didn't miss it. I didn't open it yet because I wanted most of you to submit chapter 1 through 5 test first before we moved into a new vocabulary quiz. So chapter 6 vocabulary quiz we will talk about in a future video. It wasn't even scheduled to be on our this week anyway. It's normally on our syllabus coming up in a couple classes, so we're still on track. So chapter 6 vocabulary quiz will be coming up. It is not due yet. The big thing right now is making sure if you haven't to submit your chapter 6 text sheet and then your chapter 1 through 5 vocabulary quiz by tonight, or test by tonight. But we are in week 7 now. So we're going to click into the chapter 7 folder and you'll see you have your PowerPoint. You have your study guide, which we are not going to talk about any vocabulary words today, and then your text sheet. We are going to do a little bit of our text sheet today. We're only going to do part 2A. So you want to have that pulled up and ready to go to work as I go through this with you. So let's just jump in. All right, chapter 7. The content, the reading field has to do with nursing, which I think is really appropriate since we are, I think, finally as a society starting to really recognize how important nurses are. Hopefully you did already, but now it's kind of more widespread, oh yeah, these are pretty important people. In fact, most of our healthcare field is getting a little bit more recognition and kind of the pat on the back that they've been deserving all along throughout this whole ordeal. All right, so chapter 7, all the readings will have something to do with nursing or the health field. But the concept, the reading concept we're going to focus on has to do with patterns of organization. And you might hear these referred to as text organization, rhetorical patterns, or structures. And basically it comes down to authors will often write in patterns in their words. You'll be able to identify some kind of pattern that they are using. And we're going to talk about 10 of them in this chapter. Now it sounds like a lot, but it's mostly fairly easy, just lots of details. But it's important as a college student as you read to identify the patterns because it'll help you comprehend. It's going to help you understand the meaning of the author's text. So patterns of thought, again, it's the way the authors write or arrange their details. It can help you then recall the details. If you read something and then later you're like, oh, that author was comparing and contrasting, or they were using cause effect, it's going to help you recall those details, which ultimately will lead to better comprehension. So I'm going to, I know this screen is kind of small, I'm going to make it larger. Go ahead and try to memorize for 30 seconds these two columns of numbers. Okay, hopefully you looked at that and tried to memorize. I want you to yourself to try to Restate the first column of numbers, their order. Pretty easy, not so easy. I mostly get easy for that one. Most students say, yeah, that's easy. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, what about the second column? This is usually the column that students kind of struggle with. They'll throw out like, oh, there's a 5, there's a 300 something. So if you look back at our slide here, the first column was fairly easy because it's a pattern. We know this pattern. It is even numbers. And as long as you remember where it stopped, the pattern is really easy. Second column, not so much. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no even or just odd. And it doesn't even go up or down. It does a little bit of both. So we were able to more easily recall the pattern that we could see. That's the same thing with our memory with words. Finding patterns in what we read helps us understand what we are reading. So knowing the author's pattern can help us. So we're going to break this up a little bit. So the first patterns we're going to talk about are definition, listing, cause and effect, and compare and contrast. So I'm going to go through each of these. Each of the patterns, these are the names of the patterns, will have a definition, meaning we'll define what each of these mean, and then they're going to have what's called signal or transition words. These are these phrases, and we've talked about these before with your like major minor details specifically. We have seen these words like first, another, for example, yet. Those are called signal or transition words, and those are going to help us identify which structure or which pattern is being used. So it's important to start being familiar with these particular signals. There are literally hundreds of them, so I don't expect you to ever memorize them. Just kind of get familiar with what they look like. All right, our first structure, definition. The definition of definition is literally just when a word is being defined. It tells you the meaning of a word. So an author can spend their paragraph telling you the meaning of a word. We talked about this in a previous chapter in our vocabulary chapter. Maybe they put an unknown word in bold, italics, they underline it. That can set it off. Or they might put it in like commas, parentheses, brackets, something along those lines. Here are some examples. Hypertension or high blood pressure, so it's set off by commas as well as a synonym or. Here they put the definition of heresy in parentheses. Here they use the brackets, and here they use dashes. If they don't use those punctuation clues, they could use words or phrases like is, means, defined as, known as. That lets you know that an author is about to define a word. That is our first pattern of organization. Our second pattern is listing, and it's exactly what you think it is. It is just when an author lists ideas in no particular order. We do this on a daily basis. I'm looking at my to-do list right now on my desk. So we use to-do list. We might use a grocery list. That's exactly what this is, just listing ideas. So here are some examples. I had to go buy milk, comma, bread, comma, eggs. Several benefits to exercise are good health, comma, strong and lean body, comma. Notice that in a list, you're going to see a lot of commas. So it lets you know that they are making a list. Now, in addition to the commas, they might say things like first, finally, also, to let you know that they're kind of organizing their list maybe or helping you see the ideas in the list. So that is the listing pattern. The next pattern is cause and effect. And it shows you, if A happens, then B occurs. If X happens, then Y occurs. Or maybe you have A happen and B, C, D happen. Or vice versa, A, B, C happen and it leads to D. So it's just, for me, using the words like the reason and the result. So the reason something happens and the result of that occurrence. So here are some examples. Due to her poor physical condition, Maria could not climb the stairs. As a result of the poor economy, the box company's profits decreased. Not getting enough sleep can have several negative effects. You'll know an author is using cause effect if they use words like because, due to, effect, or they may say things like as a result, therefore, as an effect. That's how you know an author is using cause and effect. So if I were to say, the wind was blowing so hard my umbrella broke. Well, the cause would be the wind. the effect would be my umbrella breaking. So you have to kind of look for the relationship between ideas. All right, our next structure is compare and contrast, and that just means I'm showing how things are alike or different. So compare is when you show how things are similar. Contrast is when you show how things are different. And I'm just going to pull up the example of a Venn diagram. So here's a whole bunch of them. You may have done something like this before. Here's like a really basic example where you have two concepts where you're showing how they're unique, and then where they overlap is how they kind of have those similarities. So a Venn diagram is a great example of like the compare contrast concept when you show how things are alike, how they're different, and maybe how they are both alike and different. So compare when maybe John has the same instructor, the main difference between, so that's a contrast. They're showing you again how things are alike or different. An author might use words like similar, the same, alike, both, to let you know that they're showing how things are alike. Or they might use words like however, on the other hand, yet, to show how things are different. All right, so I'm going to pause there. We have now talked about definition pattern, meaning showing the meanings of words, unfamiliar words. Listing is when authors really do just list the items in a list. Cause and effect, the reasons and the results of an occurrence. And then compare, contrast, to show how things are alike and or different. So now we're going to go ahead and go through the other structures. As I said, there were 10 total. Here we go. Time order. Time order is, keep getting cut off there. Time order is just simply answering the question, when? When did something happen? Before you remove the calf, make sure the engine is cool. I received a letter from the IRS after I filed my income taxes. The ABC Box Company has been in business since 1898. All of those answer the question, when? So time order may use words like first, next, later, after. It might also say things like September, 1992, March. Those are all also time order transition words because they're telling you when something happens. If you think about in school, history class, is time order organized? They are showing you when something happened. It's like a chronological order. That's time order. Process pattern or process order shows you how something is done. And they're going to have the same signal words as time order because it's still going to show you how something's done. So often it'll say, first you need to do this, next you need to do that. So that's why you basically have to look and see, is it answering the question when, or is it answering the question how? So here are some process examples. To replace the ink cartridge in your printer, you must first remove the old one. After you have sanded the vehicle, next remove the old paint. So I like to think of process as like your science classes. A lot of science classes are organized by process. They're showing you how something works, like the life cycle. I also think of process as maybe like directions, showing you how something's supposed to be done. Like maybe you're putting something together, or you got a manual or something, you're trying to follow those directions. All right, another kind of order is space order, not like outer space, spatial order. It's where something's located. It's like the location of something. For instance, the registration office is located next to the business office. The flotation device is under your seat. The fibers of the cell are parallel to each other. So it's showing you where something is located. So they may say things like on, over, under, north, south, left, right. Those are all showing you where something is located. Okay, our next pattern is classification. This one may be not as familiar. Classification is when you have a really large topic, and because it's kind of large or confusing, you break it down into categories. So you break it down so that you can see like the characteristics, the kinds, the groups. I always like to use the example of government. Government's a really large topic. When you learn about the government, you usually do so, maybe you funnel it down to like federal, state, local. Or maybe you talk about it as legislative, executive, judicial, or Republican, Democrat. So those are examples of like breaking something down and looking at the specific kinds or types. So they may say things like this. There are several types of volcanoes that fit into 4 categories, different kinds of transitions. Blood types are classified into 4 groups. So some transition words will be kinds, categories, groups, branches to let you know that they are breaking something down. All right, almost done here. Example is just what it sounds like whenever an author is trying to give you an illustration of a specific concept. Several logos have become so popular that they identify the brand without words. For instance, the golden arches of McDonald's or the apple of Apple computers. Amphibians such as turtles, snakes, or frogs can live in water or land. So if an author is using examples, they may say things like, for example, for instance, such as, to let you know that they're giving you examples. And we talked a little bit about this in the vocabulary chapter also. Okay, winding up now. Addition, just what it sounds like when the author wants to add more information. I would like to major in art. In addition, I want to minor in digital media. My brother is an architect. He is also president of the Rotary Club. Jose is the best student on campus. Furthermore, so when an author wants to add information, they might say things like in addition, also, furthermore, and to let you know that they are giving you extra information. All right, that is the second part of the patterns of organization. Now, I know this is a lot of information, so what I normally do with my students when we meet in class is to come up with a graphic organizer, which is on your screen right now. So I created this, it's called like a bubble web or a spider web, but it's a graphic organizer. Graphic organizer, Venn diagrams are also graphic organizers, but the graphic organizers are just a visual way to order information. So it's a way for you, especially for visual learners, to see how ideas connect and relate to one another so you can start making sense of them. So what I did was I put all 10 of our structures inside this graphic organizer. Anything in black, I wish that would stop popping up. Anything in black is a definition, or excuse me, it is the name of the pattern. So we have addition, classification, cause and effect, compare, contrast, example. Those are all the structures or the patterns. There are 3 orders: time order, process order, spatial order. That's why I just put those all together. In blue is how I would define the structure. Examples are illustrating the concept. Cause and effect are the reasons and results. So those are what the definition is. And then in red are examples of those signal words that can let you know that an author is using a particular structure. And I'll upload this into Blackboard as well, if it's helpful. Sometimes people really like to kind of see it in a visual manner. As I said, when I normally have you all in class, I would have you create your own graphic organizer so you can start to kind of see how these all fit together. Because as I said, Chapter 7 concepts are not really difficult. There's just a lot of information. It's a lot of details. So maybe organizing it in this way could be helpful for you. So that is the concepts of Chapter 7. So as I mentioned, we are going to be in our Chapter 7 text for just a little bit today. So if you get into your chapter or you take a look at mine, it is over nursing. And there's a little intro to the nursing field. So I would recommend kind of reading that, giving that a overview. I know several of you in the field, or excuse me, in this class are in the medical field, particular nursing, a couple of you. So this might be of use and interest to you. So we are going to focus on part 2 of our text sheet. So again, if you're looking at your text sheet, scrolling down, we're going to practice, and we'll do this together, looking at some of these concepts that deal with the structures that we just learned about, just a few, because in future videos we'll do a little bit more practice as well. So to get there, I'm going to go, it's actually on page 363 if you want to type it in. If you're using your table of contents, I'm going to go to reading 2 first, and I'm going to go to skill focus, and then I'm going to go to practicing the skill compare and contrast. And you'll see on your text sheet we are going to be on, there we go, hold on. It's going to take its time. Okay. Actually, I wanted passage 1 here. All right, passage 1, the skill of compare and contrast. So I'm going to have you, actually I'll just read it real quickly. Women are not the sole providers of nursing services. The first nursing school in the world was started in India in about 250 BC. Only men were considered to be pure enough to fulfill the role of nurse at that time. In Jesus' parable in the New Testament, the Good Samaritan paid an innkeeper to provide care for the injured man. Paying a man to provide nursing care was fairly common. During the Crusades, several orders of knights provided nursing care to their sick and injured comrades and also built hospitals. The organization and management of their hospitals set a standard for the administration of hospitals throughout Europe at that time. St. Camillus de Lellis started out as a soldier and later turned to nursing. He started the sign of the Red Cross and developed the first ambulance service. In 1876, only 3 years after the U.S. nurse received her diploma, the first U.S. nurse received her diploma from New England Hospital for Women and Children, the Alexian brothers opened their first hospital in the United States and a school to educate men in nursing. During the years from the Civil War to the Korean War, men were not permitted to serve as nurses in the military. Today, men have resumed their historical place in the profession as the history of nursing continues to be written, and men will work side by side with women. So I thought that was interesting because a lot of people think that, and maybe not so much anymore, but historically that women were the ones in the nursing field when actually it was men. Men were the ones who were original nurses. And so it's kind of taken shifts over the years, but now we're starting to see more men in the field. All right, so we are answering questions 1 and 2. What is being compared and contrasted? Hopefully you can tell that they are talking about nursing, but not only that, male versus females in the nursing field. So you could put something along the lines of male and female nurses. Question 2, then if we're looking back, says, what is the similarity between male and female nurses? The similarity between male and female nurses? Well, I think maybe the obvious answer would be that they're both providing nursing care. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to type with papers all over me. All right, they're both providing nursing care, right? That's what they're kind of getting to, is that, yeah, we're talking about males versus females, but they're both doing kind of a similar thing, nursing. All right, so from here, we're going to go down a little bit. I'm using my paper text as I go along too, so that's why you might hear some shuffling. All right, I'm going to scroll down. I'm just doing this to kind of keep it easier for you. I'm going to scroll down. Okay, here we go. So I scrolled way down. It's on page 370, basically. Oh, hold on. All right, sorry, I went too far. Scroll up one. That's what I get for trying to do too many things at once. Here we go. Passage 1. I'm not going to read this to you because it's a little lengthier, so I will recommend that you pause the video, go ahead and read passage 1. You'll see it has a little intro paragraph and then 4 selections. There are 4 numbers there, and then we'll come back to the questions together. So again, I encourage you to pause the video, read that selection, and then we'll come back together for this. All right, hopefully you've paused and read. We're only answering question 2 right now, and it's really short and sweet. How many categories is the topic divided into? Well, if you look back up, 4. And there's just not enough space, honestly, to write the rest of the question where it says, what are they? I'm not going to worry about that. Just know that they're in 4. This is practicing the concept of classification. They're taking a large topic. In this case, they're talking about like cultural assessments, cultural sensitivity and assessing, and they're taking it into 4 categories. All right. Now we're going to go down to page 372, excuse me, and it's going to be passage 3, where it says responses to pain. Responses to pain culturally have been divided into 2 categories, stoic and emotive. Stoic clients are less expressive of their pain and tend to grin and bear it. They tend to withdraw socially. Emotive clients are more likely to verbalize their expressions of pain. They desire people around to react to their pain and assist them with their suffering. Expressive clients often come from Hispanic, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean backgrounds. Stoic clients often come from Northern European and Asian backgrounds. However, ethnicity alone does not predict accurately how a person will respond to pain. Some individuals tolerate even the most severe pain with little more than a clenched jaw and frequently refuse pain medication. All right, question 1, what is the topic? Hopefully you can kind of see that they're talking about responsive to pain, responding to pain, or pain responses, whatever kind of way you want to word that. And then what are the categories? Well, there's 2 of them. Stoic and emotive. So if I'm going back here, we already answered this one right here. We said there were 4. Here we are saying the topic is response to pain, and that it is, the 2 categories are stoic and emotive. Okay. Hopefully you're starting to see, the point of this is to kind of start to see how authors use these structures in their paragraphs, how it is kind of real life reading, so to speak. I keep clicking the darn wrong thing. All right, now we're going to page 374. It's going to be passage 2. Now they're talking about kind of like a chronological or time order. So passage 2, I'll have you go ahead and kind of look at that. The procedures provided, and then you can see what is going on there. In your text sheet, we are answering questions 1 and 2 that go along with this. Question 1 says, what's the topic of the passage? So if you look, the topic is basically care procedures, procedures to provide excellent care. And how many steps? 8. This is why this is an example of kind of like this chronology kind of procedure that you have to, those are the steps you have to take to provide good care. So for number 1, when we are saying what is the topic, steps to provide good care, and how many steps did they provide? They gave us 8. All right, we're winding down here. We're going to now go page 377. So again, I'm going to just kind of scroll down a little bit, and it's going to start with passage 2, liquid medication. So if you take a look at that passage, to me, again, it kind of looks like I am being told how to do something. Thoroughly mix the medication, remove the cap, hold the bottle. I am definitely being led through a process to how to do something. So we are answering question number 2. What process is explained above? Well, there's a little title there that says liquid medication. So to me, that means the process I'm being told is how to administer liquid medication. So that's my process. Okay, you guys are doing great. Sticking with me, hopefully. We're doing one more. Page 379. We are going to look at passage 1. Make sure I didn't go back to it fast. Okay. For purposes of education and research, most agencies allow student and graduate health professional access to client records. The records are used in client conferences, clinics, rounds, and written papers or client studies. The student is bound by a strict ethical code to hold all information in confidence. It is the responsibility of the student and health professionals to protect the client's privacy by not using a name or any statements in the notations that would identify the client. Additionally, it is very important for staff and students to maintain confidentiality with worksheets and assignment sheets. Caution must be used to ensure that papers are not left where visitors and clients may see them. So this one's to know, we're answering question 3, How do we know that this is a listing pattern? Because they're kind of listing these ways to keep records kind of confidential. Well, hopefully, as I read, you saw a signal word there. The word additionally. They're using the word additionally to kind of carry on their list. So that's the signal word they primarily use right there. Additionally. Okay, that is all we're going to do in Chapter 7 today. So Chapter 7, we talked about all these patterns of organization. We looked at the graphic organizer that helped kind of sort them in different ways. And then we did Part 2A of our text sheet. I did want to just spend a couple quick minutes reminding you back in our content area down toward the bottom. You will see your video on how to get your digital library. Now, I did that because we did this before spring break, and maybe you need a refresher because you still will need to do your final project. Your final project is still due April 30th. The change is a couple things. You do not have to give me note checkpoints. Initially, your steps 1 through 3 notes were going to be due this week. I'm not going to make those a requirement any longer, although still please feel free to submit things early, see if you're on the right track. So inside the final project folder, remember I put the original directions just so that you had a frame of reference, but then I put the revised, and they're going to look fairly similar, the essay to the PowerPoint again, because you still have to follow very similar directions, but you'll see when I talk about revised, steps 1, 2, and 3 really haven't changed. Step 4 is the big change, where you're really just kind of finding one article. You do no longer have to find 2 articles, a scholarly and a popular. You are just finding a scholarly article. I took out, the original step 5 completely. So now that is one less step for you to work on. And then the last step is kind of synthesizing, putting all your information together. And I still have that outline of what you're doing. Paragraph 4, if you're doing the essay, talks about what you're going to do with your article. You're basically just telling me what you learned from your article. So this really gives you an outline, and I will show you as well some outlines of how you can start your writing. If you're doing the PowerPoint, again, not much has changed from the essay. They're going to look the same except for the last step. But same thing with your PowerPoint. Steps 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much the same. Step 4, I've cut a lot. I cut the original step 5 completely, so step 5 now is just putting it all together. And then here is a recommendation of how to organize your slides. And again, for both of them, I cut the point values in half, so it's not worth 150 points anymore. It's worth half that. So that is your final project. Please still be paying attention to that. Please still be working on that. A lot of you had already started work on it, so that's why I kept it in. And then how to get your article refresher video is there as well. Last thing I want to talk to you about is your mastery skills. So if I'm going back up, mastery skills assessment, I have now uploaded 2 videos. One on making inferences, and most of these are only like 5 to 8 minutes. And then the other one on fact and opinion. My next one, I believe, will just be patterns of organization, since we just got done talking about that. I think that's the next video I'm going to go ahead and work on, so that way we can kind of just keep up from that. And then I'll go back and take a look and see, like, if there is a particular skill that a lot of you struggled with, I might make a video like on one of these ones. So please still be working on mastery skills. That's still important as well. All right, if you need anything, feel free to reach out, and we'll talk soon.